the Dems are running around talking about cutting Medicaid, cutting this, cutting that, which I've said all along. I've known President Trump a long time. I actually think we should reform these entitlement programs, but I've told everyone that will listen, President Trump will not cut entitlement programs, including Medicaid. He will not do it. Now, waste, fraud, and abuse, that's a different thing, but Welker got him to answer this, and I think he answered it beautifully on Medicaid. Take a look.
What happens if it comes to your desk, has the tax cuts, but also cuts to Medicaid? Would you veto that?
Well, we're not doing that.
Would you veto that?
I would if they were cutting it, but they're not cutting it. They're looking at fraud, waste, and abuse, and nobody minds that. If illegal immigrants are in the mix, if people that aren't supposed to be there, people that are non-citizens are in the mix, nobody minds that. Waste, fraud, and abuse. But we're not cutting Medicaid, we're not cutting Medicare, and we're not cutting Social Security.
He's not going to allow cutting Medicaid. And if Dems want to go to the mat because we're making the program more efficient or getting rid of illegals getting Medicaid, God bless them. I'll take that fight every day of the week. All right, guys, good Monday to you. I hope you had a great weekend, hopefully a little downtime. This wasn't the normal, everything happening this weekend, normal Trump stuff. Next weekend's Mother's Day. I don't know if that's good or bad for Trump time. It's like sometimes the weekends more stuff happens, but the one big thing that he did do was this Meet the Press interview, and I'm going to break it down for you big time. Jim McLaughlin, the president's pollster, is here. And you guys, if you've been a long time watcher of the show, the guy doesn't disappoint. I mean, I love my conversations with Jim McLaughlin because when I prepare for a guest, I'll have 10, 15 questions or whatever. And every time I have Jim McLaughlin on, I get to 2 of them because he starts bringing up these really great points. And I go, wait a second, what about that? What about that? So I've known Jim a long time. I love having conversations with him because he's got his finger on the pulse. He's known Trump so long and been polling for him and working with him that he's always got such unique insights. And I love it. But I want to get to this Meet the Press interview before I get to the conversation with Jim. Because you guys know what I feel about this, right? I've always said, I don't know why they reward bad behavior. Like Kristen Welker, as you probably, if you watched it yesterday, she does the interview and then has a panel and it's like, okay, guys, can we talk about why Trump was so bad? And I get, you remember I asked Caroline this the other day and I dealt with it myself when I was press secretary. Trump can hang with anybody. There's no interview he can't do. I get it. This to me has never been about, can you go toe to toe with these guys or in fact crush them? It's why are you helping them? Give them ratings and attention for shows that are very bad and for people that are just completely biased, whether it's Terry Moran at ABC or Welker at Meet the Press or Jeffrey Goldberg at the Atlantic. I just don't like rewarding bad behavior. And I actually give, as you guys know, I give the White House a ton of credit for how they have engaged with new media and independent media and influencers. It's amazing what they're doing. And I love it. And it's funny how many people are whining about this. I was out talking to some folks over the last several days and they're like, it's just what they're doing. It's because the media hates it. They don't like not having to share the spotlight. It's all about them. And so I know this, and I've talked to a bunch of them, and they're not happy. I'd say they're jealous, but they're more like bratty. But anyway, he came out swinging right out of the gate with Kristen Welker. I want to show you the first thing because she immediately, I'm going to go after you on the economy, and here's how she did it.
Prices are already going up on some popular items, tires, strollers.
This is such a dishonest interview already. Prices are down on groceries. Prices are down for oil. Prices are down for all energy. Prices are down at tremendous numbers for gasoline. And let me tell you, when you have the big thing, what he did, he spent like a stupid person, which he was, but he spent like a very stupid person. And that was bad for inflation. But what really killed us with inflation was the price of energy.
So, correct. I mean, right out of the gate. It's it was amazing. She couldn't wait. But he just turned the tables real quick. Here's what's down. And by the way, it's not just energy, gas is down. Everything gets fueled by energy, right? So if you think about how much it costs to get something to market, it's on a truck or a boat or whatever. And therefore it costs money. And if you can take that cost down significantly, which he has, then the price will ultimately drop. So it's they only want to focus on one piece of the total pie, right? He's saying, hey, look at the biggest pieces that I'm taking down. And again, it's so masterful, but she didn't stop there. She didn't. She, of course, had to go out about other businesses and the effects of tariffs. Take a look.
What do you say to those who believe you are taking the country down an authoritarian path?
Well, there you go again. Why don't you ask it a different way? Many people wanted to come into our country. Many people love Trump. I won the election. They didn't win the election. I got a lot more votes than they did. I won the popular vote. I won all 7 swing states by a lot. A lot of people were surprised. I said, I think he could win 4, maybe 5. No, I won all 7, and I won by a lot. And I won, actually, I think there was a lot of hanky-panky going on, but it was too big to rig. That's the good news. It's too big to rig. But let me just say, so when you make these statements about people say this, well, you know, they had their chance at the election and they lost big. So you should ask the question differently. You should say, what about the people that want to be in this country? What about the people that love this country?
But what do you say? I'm asking it on behalf of those people to give you a chance to respond to them. What do you say to those people, sir?
Those people are going to be very happy. They're going to have to see some results. And I think we had a great 100 days. There are a lot of people that say it was unprecedented. It was an absolutely unprecedented 100 days. And I hope that they're going to be right.
You know, I love how he flipped the script on this. Okay? Because just stop for a second. Sometimes when he says stuff or responds, it's like you'll be like, yeah, that was great. But I actually loved how he did this, because these guys in the media always take the negative. Some people say that your policies are hurting. I'm like, he's doing exactly what he said. Where are those people? Why do they never say, hey, there's a lot of people that are unbelievably proud that you're actually following through on your campaign promises? I mean, just think about this for a second. I brought it up last week on the 100-day mark. How many politicians go around and say, guess what? I said the following and then I actually did it? No, it's normally politicians are, I promised all this stuff, but look, here's why I couldn't get it through. The gridlock in Washington and blah, 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 blah. And here's another excuse for you. And all they can do when they ask them a question is, some of your critics say, and by the way, they name one. Stop hiding behind this. Some people say, who? Name a person. Just say, Tom Smith. I talked to Susie so-and-so. But why is it like that? That's not real. You know that, right? Those aren't actual people. That's them. That's the dirty secret. When they say some of your critics, it's like those are their colleagues in the newsroom. They're actually not real people that they went out and like some random voter. They came up in an interview. They're just covering for the fact that it's like, I think the following, or my colleagues at NBC News are really critical of this, or a bunch of other people like on the left. Like they want to couch it, but I loved how he actually stopped and framed this. He did it again in another question where she kind of went after him again on the car stuff. Take a look.
So small businesses say they are being hurt by the Chinese tariffs, and some could be forced to shut down.
And many businesses are being helped.
Are you considering tariff relief for small businesses?
Why do you always mention that, you know, you pick up a couple of little businesses? What about the car business? They're going to make a fortune because of the tariffs. Do you know that the union, the head of the union, who was no fan of mine, Sean Fain, I guess his name is, right? He didn't endorse me. The Teamsters did. A lot of people did. A lot of unions did. But he didn't. He couldn't stand me. Now he's saying, wow, what Trump's done for the automobile, I can't believe it. I assume he's going to probably now say, the next thing he can say is, I endorse this guy. He's the greatest I've ever seen. He can't believe it's happening.
All right, but did you see how she started that question? Small businesses say, wait, just stop on its face. As a guy who got ridiculed for false and misleading statements and spreading misinformation, just stop for a second. And this goes back to the last thing. Think about what I just said there, what she said. Small businesses say, what? Small businesses don't talk. Remember they mocked Mitt Romney for saying corporations are people? As if all small businesses think this, because I actually know some small business leaders who love what Trump's doing. But tell me that it's I'm the bad guy for saying certain things at the podium with Trump. And then Kristen Welker asks the question, small businesses say, really? We're a country of 350 million people, and she knows how all small businesses say. That's a lie. That's spreading misinformation. But yet, if someone from Trump administration made that same thing and said, small businesses say that this is the best president ever, they'd say, that's false and misleading. But Kristen Welker says it, and, whatever. And yet, President Trump's the only guy who actually will stop and call them out. And you heard him again flip the script. What about the automobile industry that's actually in love with him? What about Sean Fain, the head of the auto workers union that like had nothing nice to say about Trump and now says he's saving the industry. Oh, well, let's just gloss over that because apparently small businesses say, I mean, the level of dishonesty that we get fed up every day is pretty unbelievable. And yet they want to call it out for everybody else. Oh, these people are so dishonest and spread misinformation. Think about what they say and how they ask questions. At least she did get the border right. I'll give her credit for that. Take a look.
Let's talk about the border.
Okay.
Let's talk about deportations. Border crossings are at their lowest level ever recorded. Is the border
Is that good?
Is the border now secure?
Yeah, it's really secure.
It's absolutely
isn't that good?
secure.
When you say that, doesn't that just sound good? After being abused for years by an incompetent president that allowed people to pour through an open border, criminals from all over the world, murderers and insane people from mental institutions and insane asylums, isn't it a beautiful thing when you say it's the most secure it's ever been in the history of our country? Isn't that a nice statement?
I mean, you can't deny it. That's the thing. They know it, and they have to give them credit for it. I mean, that's why I think they're like, well, I'll get to this in a second because they've got a new hoax that I want to touch on if I have time before Jim. On China, though, it's really interesting because you remember everybody the last couple of weeks has been like, oh, all this stuff from China and, you know, it's going to cost us more. And everyone wants to rag on it. But there was an interesting story that came out. Didn't get a lot of attention. But everyone says, oh, he's taking on China. It's going to cost us so much money and prices are going to rise. As if the alternative is just to let China keep running ramshot over us. I've told you guys before, I believe it's an existential threat to us, militarily and economically. So either we take it on or we just kind of keep kicking the can down the road until we're all told to speak Mandarin. But here's the thing that you didn't probably catch because the media doesn't want to admit this. It's working. It's working. New story out. And again, it didn't get a lot of attention. So when I saw this, I was like, whoa, how come this is the headline. China says door is open to trade talks with the U.S. Let me read part of this. China has said it's evaluating approaches from U.S. officials to start negotiations about tariffs, a potential de-escalation in the trade war that has raised hopes formal trade talks could start soon. By the way, for the last several weeks, I have said this, July summit in China. Trump will go. This is where this is headed. And this is the thing. If we fight, we'll fight to the end. If we talk, the door's open, China's Commerce Ministry stated Friday. The tariff and war and trade war were unilaterally initiated by the United States. Fine. True. But you guys treated us very unfairly for decades. If the United States wants to talk, it should show its sincerity and be prepared to correct its wrong practices and cancel the unilateral tariffs. China has already, according to this story, reportedly comprised a list of U.S. goods exempt from its 125 tariff, check this out, this is the key line, this is what I was telling you about, aiming to erase trade tensions without making public concessions. The list is expanding with recent waivers on U.S. ethane, some semiconductor products, and certain pharmaceuticals, offering behind-the-scenes relief while maintaining a tough public stance. You see that? Just stop for a second and realize Trump's squeezing them. And everyone said, oh, this isn't going to work. It ends badly. And here they are. Easing. And because they are responding to this. And again, Trump won't get credit for it. But everybody was like, oh, all the people, to quote Kristen Welker, everybody says this is silly, right? Except the people who actually want to solve the problem. That is the same dum-dums that said, hey, if we get China into the World Trade Organization, they'll be a responsible stakeholder and everything will be great. Nothing of the sort has happened. In fact, it's gone the opposite. Everybody had all these geniuses that taught us about foreign policy have been wrong. By the way, I want to talk about the political for a second because there's two things that I think are important to point out in that interview. He talked about the future of MAGA, and I want to play you this clip. It's crucial.
You have built a political movement that has transformed the Republican Party.
Industry.
It's transformed the country, quite frankly.
Political movement in history, MAGA. Make America great again.
When you look to the future, Mr. President, do you think the MAGA movement can survive without you as its leader?
Yes, I do.
What gives you?
I think it's so strong, and I think we have tremendous people. I think we have a tremendous group of people. We talked about a number of them. You look at Marco, you look at J.D. Vance, who's fantastic. You look at, I could name 10, 15, 20 people right now just sitting here. No, I think we have a tremendous party. And you know what I can't name? I can't name one Democrat. I mean, I look at the Democrats, they're in total disarray.
It's amazing. I did this documentary. You guys remember Front Row Joes. If you go to my website, charlesspicer.com, you can click on it and see the thing. But I asked about the MAGA movement, the mantle of it, who's going to inherit it. I kind of think he's right, but it's important. He also, you know, I will say this. He talked a little bit about 2028, and I want to play this for you because people had freaked out as he trolled everybody about 2028. He put that to bed, though, I think at least. And I mean, I think this is not only the right call. I mean, not the right call, but just like if I were his age, at some point enjoy life a little. But take a look. He talks about 2028 and puts I think, a very certain period at the end of that sentence. Take a look.
Are you seriously considering a third term, Mr. President, even though it's prohibited by the Constitution? Or is this about staying politically viable?
I will say this. So many people want me to do it. I have never had requests so strong as that. But it's something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do. I don't know if that's constitutional that they're not allowing you to do it or anything else, but there are many people selling the 2028 hat. But this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, ideally a great Republican to carry it forward. But I think we're going to have 4 years, and I think 4 years is plenty of time to do something really spectacular.
All right. The last thing I want to play for you, and then because I want to get into this thing with Jim McLaughlin, the president's pollster. The Dems are running around talking about cutting Medicaid, cutting this, cutting that, which I've said all along. I've known President Trump a long time. I actually think we should reform these entitlement programs. But I've told everyone that will listen, President Trump will not cut entitlement programs, including Medicaid. He will not do it. Now, waste, fraud, and abuse, that's a different thing. But Welker got him to answer this, and I think he answered it beautifully on Medicaid. Take a look.
What happens if it comes to your desk, has the tax cuts, but also cuts to Medicaid? Would you veto that?
Well, we're not doing that.
Would you veto that?
I would if they were cutting it, but they're not cutting it. They're looking at fraud, waste, and abuse. And nobody minds that. If illegal immigrants are in the mix, if people that aren't supposed to be there, people that are non-citizens are in the mix, nobody minds that. Waste, fraud, and abuse. But we're not cutting Medicaid, we're not cutting Medicare, and we're not cutting Social Security.
Hopefully that puts it to rest. I'm just so tired. Like I've known the guy a long time. He's not going to allow cutting Medicaid. And if Dems want to go to the mat because we're making the program more efficient or getting rid of illegals getting Medicaid, God bless them. I'll take that fight every day of the week. I will tell you one last thing before I get ready for the Jim McLaughlin conversation. I mentioned this at the beginning. We're talking about the border. The media is back at it. So we had a Maryland man, right? Remember? Abrego Garcia, the MS-13 gangbanger that abused his wife. Yeah. Well, apparently now the New York Times is reporting. You've got to just see this. The New York Times did a 400-word story on a illegal in this country that raped a corpse on the New York subway. And they, in the entire story, don't mention, they call him a man does this bad. I mean, like, it's not some random dude. The guys in this country, yet they do not want to portray any of these people as bad people. That's what it comes down to. A Maryland man, a family man. This guy's just a good man who just happens to rape a corpse on a subway. And yet, again, why do they talk about misinformation? They deny people understanding the context of these things because they don't want to paint these people in a bad light. It's unbelievable. All right. We got a big week coming up. It's going to be amazing. Trish Regan's coming tomorrow. Chicks on the Right Wednesday. We've got Dan Turrentine, my buddy from the morning meeting, and Elizabeth Mitchell from the Daily Signal going to be joining us on Thursday. And Alex Bruzewitz, who ran the Trump digital Twitter social media podcast outreach, he will be here. So I'm just going to tell you that. And by the way, quick update. Thanks to everyone. We've got 1.3 million views a month on YouTube. This is unbelievable. So quick note to everybody who has been watching the premieres at 6 o'clock every night. You know who you are. Hart, Carter, Jeff, Nixie. Barbara, all of you guys who've been with us so many nights. I appreciate you guys sticking with me. If you're catching the weekend rants, it doesn't matter. I appreciate you all as well. Please make sure you're subscribing, hit that notification button. And if you want, please share the link to the show with 5 to 10 people. It really helps us grow. So thanks so much. All right. Speaking of great people, though, who watch every night, let me tell you about my buddy Leo Grillo. Leo is the founder of Delta Rescue. He rescued this Doberman, as you guys have heard me tell you before. And that began the journey of what now is Delta Rescue. It is the world's largest no-kill sanctuary. Thank you, Leo, for always reminding me that. This is a place where abused, neglected, malnutrition dogs, cats, horses, animals of all stripes can come and get the care and nutrition for life. And Leo Grillo, this is not a shelter or some big government program. There's no USAID grant. It's all funded through contributions of people like me and you. I've made a personal contribution because I love what Leo's doing. If you can do that too, please go to Delta Rescue. Check it out. DeltaRescue.org. Check out the videos. Please make a donation. And then click the estate planning kit because maybe you got a full 401k or an IRA or whatever. Your tax planner might be able to tell you some kind of tax benefit you can get now and help make it an enduring mission. So go to DeltaRescue.org. All right. Every night when I go to sleep, you guys know this. Here is another empty bag of Beam. I'm almost done with the other one. Beam's Dream Powder is essential in my routine right now. I am so excited at what a real difference it has made in my life. I love all the flavors. That one that I showed you is the cinnamon cocoa one. There's the brownie, the peppermint. They're all amazing. This is a great American company run by people who have the same kind of values that we do: hard work, integrity, delivering on results. It's completely science-backed. Professionals, athletes of all shapes and sizes take this. I mean, like I said, the blend is amazing. I take one scoop, put it in the microwave for 30 seconds, and then 30 minutes later, I put my head on the pillow, and when I wake up, refreshed, raring to go. I'm not kidding you. If I do miss it, because that happens, I can totally tell the difference. And by the way, I now travel with this stuff. It's got all natural ingredients: reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. It's so cool. So here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of 40% off. You can try any of those flavors and get 40% off. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer and use code word Spicer. So it's shopbeam.com/Spicer. And then you use code word Spicer for up to 40% off. Support this great American company and invest in yourself at the same time. All right. It is my pleasure to introduce one of my favorite guests. Always have a great conversation with Jim McLaughlin. He's the president and chief pollster over there at McLaughlin and Associates. Jim, always good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, Sean, it's just such a pleasure to be here. By the way, too many times I spend too much time watching the Sean Spicer show than I am doing the work that I need to do.
You can never watch it enough. In fact, so last week we hit the 100-day mark as we head into 200 days. What do you think the lessons learned are? Meaning, what is going really well, polling wise, image wise? What do they need? Where are the areas of improvement?
Look, I give the administration so much credit because you can't accomplish what they've accomplished without the proper planning. And you think about it, where we were, like literally just last year, where we had these crazy open borders. And, they were all telling us, unless we get bipartisan immigration reform, we can't solve the border problem. And what do we find out? Just need a new president. That's how we solve the border problem. But, they'll also tell you, they'll be the first ones to tell you, even when it comes to immigration, the border, we've still got a lot of work to do. They've done an incredible job at the border. But there's still a lot of criminals. There's still a lot of terrorists that are in the United States of America because of what happened under the chaos that was Joe Biden's administration. So I think they've done an incredible job because, even a lot of folks, I've been doing a lot of focus groups recently among swing voters. And there is they are giving Donald Trump and Republicans on whether it's the economy, whether it's national security, crime, they're giving them the benefit of the doubt on these issues, even on tariffs. The Democrats love saying, "Oh, see how unpopular these tariffs are?" We just asked in a national survey whether they thought tariffs and using it as a negotiating tool was going to help the economy and their economic situation or hurt it. By a 2-to-1 margin, they believe it's actually going to help the economy, 52-26. So it's, there's a lot of work in progress. And again, that big number, Sean, that I always point back to is 70% of Americans said the country was off on the wrong track on election day. So they knew it. They've
Where
got
is it now?
a lot of messes to fix. It's right now, it's around 42 right direction, around 50% wrong track. So you've seen a big improvement. But if you're the Republicans and you want to defy history in the midterm election, Sean, what do you have to do? You have to get that up over 50% in terms of the right direction. That's where it is for presidents when they win re-election. And that's where it is. Like we did the polling for the Speaker of the House back in 2002. I was working for Tom Davis, who was head of the NRCC at the time. We also worked for Jim Gilmore, who'd been running the RNC. So back when we defied history and actually picked up seats during the midterms in 2002, it was because the view was George W. Bush and the Republicans had the economy doing well. They were keeping people safe. And they were able to also go back to the voters with some good accomplishments, not the least of which was a prescription drug benefit when it came to Medicare. And I'm showing my age there, Sean.
But no, but I was just thinking back, that 2000 to 2002 period. I mean, just yes or no, I guess let's just start this way. Don't you think like mechanics matter, though, to like how those candidates ran and how they were prepared? I mean, that had something to do with it, right?
Without a doubt.
Okay, yeah. So who was running the incumbent retention part at the party during that 2000 to 2002 period? Do you remember who that guy was?
Look, was that you?
Oh, was it? Was it?
I didn't think
when we defied history. You know what? Let me look at my calendar. It was. I just off the top of my head, I was thinking, where was I from 2000 to 2002?
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway, all right.
Did we have any incumbents? This is me thing. Did we have any incumbents that lost in 2002?
Yeah. Remember Felix Garuccio?
Yes, Felix.
George Geekus in Pennsylvania. Although that was a member. Yeah. So
I'm
but they
impressed.
were those were
Over
mechanics.
20 years
They didn't raise.
Remember all those.
You can't help it. This is when that's scarred into my memory, Jim. I mean, All right, guys, hate to interrupt this conversation, but you guys, I've always told you about how I fall asleep, but when I wake up, I love starting the day with a cup of Wire Two Fish coffee. Check this bag out. It's getting smaller. I love when I send my order in and I get a nice note back from Leah, one of the founders. It's awesome. It's such a great company. It's a great cup of coffee. I love the Arabica beans. That one that I just showed you that I do is the medium roast, which I'm a huge fan of. When I make a pot for a group of folks, I even try to make a little extra and then keep it for iced coffee for the week. I love this stuff. Not only is the coffee great, the company's great. And that's why I love buying it, because when I use my money, I know that I'm not just buying a great product, which is cool, but I also know that I've got a great company that loves coffee, fishing, clean water initiatives, and Jesus. And that's literally, it's probably the opposite, right? They love Jesus, fishing, and good coffee. But it's really cool. They give 25% of their profits to faith-based and clean water initiatives. I can totally get behind that. And here's really cool news. If you go to wired2fishcoffee.com, and it's the numeral 2, so it's wired2fishcoffee.com. They've now got 5-pound bags. So you can get the 2-pound bag like I do, or if you're a big coffee drinker, you get the 5-pound. It's much more economical. I love this brand. Don't forget, you can use code WeCare, one word, WeCare, and you get 10% off of your first order. So go over to wired2fishcoffee.com and let's make 2025 the year we align our coffee and our values. Back to the conversation with Jim. But I digress for a second, because I do, when you were talking about all this, like a lot of things popped in my head, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things is, like, to your point, like, people do look at the border in particular and some of these other things and say, wow, what a sea change. But I have my theories on this, and this is but I want you to answer this first. Okay. Mm-hmm. I look and I say, okay, based on the last 4 years, look at what Donald Trump has done. Border secure. I go into the supermarket. I mean, I literally drove carpool last week for the kids, and I'm going through Alexandria, and gas had been at $2.90 something. It was down to $2.87 for unleaded. You look at egg prices that were as high as like $6, and now they're back down. So I'm a big believer that if you voted on, in inflation, I mean, like, the things that really matter to people are moving in the right direction. But when I go look at like Real Clear Politics and I look at the president's approval rating or the New York Times or CNN, it's in the low 40s and it's dropped. Okay, I have my theories, but I want to hear yours. Why?
Well, first of all, has his approval dropped a little bit? Yeah, because he's doing some hard things.
Right.
But I have literally seen 4 legitimate polls, including one of my own, within the last week. And these, when I say legitimate polls, these are from private Republican pollsters. His job approval rating is right around 50%, give or take. It's right around. Don't believe the New York Times poll, the Washington Post poll, because it's literally just like their reporting is biased and the journalism. I mean, they basically become left-wing blogs for all intents and purposes. When you look at the demographics on the New York Times poll, only 37% of their sample actually voted for Donald Trump. Last I checked, he got 77 million voters and about half the electorate actually voted for him. So they're undersampling Trump voters by about 13 points. And then when you look at the ABC News Washington Post poll, it's only 34% will tell you they actually voted for Donald Trump. I don't know how they do it, but for some reason they seem to miss, our friend Kelly.
How many people, what percentage do they say voted for Harris?
Yeah, it's usually around the same percentage that they have voting for Donald Trump. And remember, he beat her by a couple points.
Right.
But they are clearly, and what happens is, Sean, by the way, it also tells you they have a lot of non-voters in there. They're samples, a lot of times they're adults and they're registered voters. And we all know the universe is much, much smaller. It's a smaller universe that comes out during the midterms than comes out during the national presidential elections. So they're getting these non-voters, for whatever reason, always tend to lean left. So that's why they're getting these crazy numbers that they're getting right now. Because look, when his poll comes out, Mark Penn, who's a Democratic pollster, he does the Harvard Harris. He does a great job. I believe his last survey, he had Donald Trump's approval rating at about 50%. So these were the same polls, by the way, that were telling us back in 2020, Donald Trump had a 38% approval, a 39% approval rating. And then what happened was, between him and Joe Biden it was a very close election back in 2020. And there's no way that election would have been close if his job approval rating was at 38, 39%. And look, there's no question now. Whenever you're trying to do big changes here, you're going to have a little bit of erosion in your support. But you know what? Doesn't matter now. And the White House understands this. The Republicans in Congress understand it. One of the reasons they voted for Donald Trump and the Republicans this time was because people just knew, in spite of the media, the Joe Biden's White House and Kamala Harris, they're trying to tell you there's no inflation and the economy's doing great. 70% countries off on the wrong track. They knew it. They knew they were doing better under Donald Trump. They give him a lot of credibility still on the issue of especially the economy. And they know when it all said and done, if we can go into the election in these midterms, just like they did in 2002, where they're feeling like they have more money in their pockets and the trains are running on time, that's when you have the Republicans defy history and pick up seats during the midterms.
All right, I love this explanation because it wasn't one of my two, and I want to give you my two reasons. But I want to just, before I do that, because you brought up the midterms, before I give you my two and have you react, if Speaker Mike Johnson called you right now, or Richard Hudson, the congressman that leads the National Republican Congressional Committee, and said, all right, Jim, we're watching these polls. We got to figure out what we need to do going into the midterms. Is your answer to them stay the course, or is it, hey, do more on the following two fronts? Like, what do you tell him?
Get accomplishments done. And you better get those tax cuts done as soon as possible, because that was one of our problems during the midterms back in 2018. They didn't they literally passed those tax cuts back in 2018, right before the first of the year. So people during the midterms weren't really feeling the effects of all the good things that happened, and our economy was starting to boom. And then obviously, we had the COVID shutdown, which hurt the economy back in 2020. Get those tax cuts passed ASAP, because if there's anything we've learned, what's going to happen is a lot of the problem is this administration is doing great stuff when it comes to the economy. Energy independence. The deregulation. There was one report that came out the other day that said the average American is going to save $11,000 a year because of the deregulation that this administration is doing. People understand the smart cuts that are being done, the effective cuts that are being done in government. That's going to lead to less inflation. We all know what caused the inflation under Joe Biden, the record inflation. What caused it was all this crazy spending. So you've got the spending cuts, you've got the deregulation, you've got the energy independence, you've got us, negotiating better and fair trade agreements. You throw the tax cuts on top of that, I'm telling you, the economy is going to boom. What I would tell the Republicans, and I think they know this, John Thune, Mike Johnson, get those tax cuts passed ASAP, and you will see a booming economy. That's how we sprint and go into the midterms with momentum.
All right, so I'll give you my two, and the first one plays into what you're talking about, I think. But I wanted to, so I had this conversation last week on the 100-day mark with Kalen Dorr, who used to work for me in the first Trump administration, now leads like the surrogate operations and a lot of it helps put out the messaging and stuff like that. And I said to Kalen, I said, you sent me the list of accomplishments. And the first draft that he gave me was 23 pages.
Yeah.
And I said to Kalen, look, I was paging through this.
Yeah.
And I forgot a lot of what you've done. And I said, and I mean this like seriously, I said, look, you're never going to keep up with Donald Trump. I know that. I've experienced it personally. I know you probably have too. But I said, do you think that like somehow you need to slow, like part of the problem, I think, is that when you're doing this much stuff, and don't get me wrong. It's like, how do you take a really great product and figure out on the label that's this big, how to put all the great attributes, right? Yeah. So part of what I've been trying to say to them is, how do you guys, is part of the problem, I guess this is the first question I have of my two-part thing about the poll numbers, is part of the problem is that when you're moving at breakneck speed, you don't have time to stop and say, hey, by the way, I mean, everyone gets the border. I think they've done a really good job on that. But there's a lot of these other things that I was paging through, and I thought, wow, I forgot you guys did that. Or there wasn't a lot of, do they need to, I know, again, I'm saying this with knowing that it's Donald Trump, but do they need to slow down a little bit or double down on, I mean, I feel like it's like, when I pulled out, when my wife and I bought our last car, and 2 years later, we were checking something out in the car, and the guy said, do you know if you press this button, it does that? And I was like, I've never known that. For 2 years, I didn't even know that the car could do this, because there were so many features that we didn't even take the time to learn. And I feel like in some ways that's the Trump administration. They're doing so much stuff that sometimes you don't even stop to know all the features.
Oh, and you know what, Sean? That's a very valid point. But you know why Donald Trump ran for president? I literally thought, I remember meeting with him the summer after he left office, and I'm saying, he's not running again. His life was too good. I saw him down in Bedminster. He was tan, rested, relaxed and ready. He had the weight of the world off his shoulders. And then as I was meeting with him, especially it started in that summer of 22, when we had the record inflation and then we had the Afghanistan debacle, I'm saying, this guy's running, because he believes he's not just fixing America for the next 4 years. He's fixing America for the next 400 years.
Yeah.
He looks at this as place. You know what? He views us as a necessary evil as his pollsters. He literally does. We are a necessary evil for him. Everyone, he doesn't wake up every morning and look at polls.
You know what, Jim? I'm so glad you said that, because I keep telling people, if he wanted high poll numbers, he knows how to do this. Do the easy stuff. Don't take on the hard stuff. He gets it. I'm so glad you just said that, because I keep saying this over and over. Doing the tariffs, making other countries accountable is tough. If it was easy, someone else would have done it. And this is the point that, like, if he wanted Jim and John McLaughlin to walk in and say, tell me how great I am, you go, guess what? Do more of, like, getting rid of plastic straws. Everyone loves that. It's easy. But he's doing big, bold things, and that's hard.
He's doing things to set up America for years and years to come. And he understands history. He understands that most quote unquote empires, whether it's the Roman Empire, etc., they've got a shelf life of usually only a few hundred years. We want to make sure that we continue this beautiful, great American democratic experiment for years and years to come. And what he's doing is he's setting up America. And you know what? Because he doesn't care about the polls. He doesn't care, what the Washington Post or the New York Times say about him. And you know what? And I tell people this all the time. I'm somebody who's on the board at CPAC. I grew up in the conservative movement. Donald Trump is not necessarily a movement conservative. He's a common sense guy.
Yes.
And what he sees, he saw what worked the first time he was president. And just as important, he saw what failed under the last 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to figure out the things that work best to make us more prosperous and to make us safer. And, one of the things I haven't touched on at all is, the media is like criticizing him because he's trying to bring peace in the Middle East and in the Ukraine-Russia war. And the conversation before he got elected was, how long is this war going to last? Okay. Now it's, okay, when is the fighting going to stop? When is the bloodshed going to stop?
Yes. By the way, so that's literally my second thing that I was going to ask you about, because I'll say it backwards since you brought this up, but I'm like, okay, again, the context isn't there. Russia invaded Crimea during Obama. Russia took over Ukraine and invaded it in Biden. None of that happened in Trump. He's cleaning up everybody else's mess. He's doing the same thing with Hamas, right? That happened under Biden. The withdrawal from Afghanistan under Biden. Like all of these things, and he is cleaning up other people's messes. Okay, but this is where this leads me perfectly to my other big polling question. The Media Research Center put out a study last week that says 92% of the coverage of Donald Trump's first 100 days was negative. Now, Jim McLaughlin, if I tell you, here's a product that I want you to buy, you're going to the store in an hour, but I'm going to tell you something about it. It sucks. It's going to make you really unhealthy. It costs a ton of money. It's going to break down. It looks horrible. Do you want to buy it? You're going to be like, no. And so what I think happens is, to your point about Ukraine, or for example, or any of these things, they're like, oh, this is what Trump's doing. This is bad. He's horrible at this. He's slashing that. He's cutting that. And then you go, wow, I guess I don't like what he's doing, right? I think that the media's negative coverage is an attempt to try to get his polls down and say, oh, see, it's not popular. When in fact, so they're trying to make a narrative come true. But I think this is why I go back to the first question I asked you, because when you talk to people and say, so let me get this straight, what is it that you don't like? Well, I read a story that it's a constitutional crisis. Okay, what's the crisis? That he's deporting an MS-13 gangbanger that beat his wife? Oh, is that what you're upset about? Well, no, I read a story in the New York Times. I think that the New York Times, Politico, NBC, that their negative comments, stories, false narratives against Trump are an attempt to drive his poll numbers down to create a narrative that then they can say, oh, well, see, he's not popular. But so what I guess all I'm asking you in a very long-winded way is to say, what impact is the media's attempt to attack him having on his image?
Oh, and I don't think there's any question about it, that it is affecting things a little bit. But you know what? The vast majority of Americans, if they were paying attention to the old legacy media, we would have President Kamala Harris now. And it just goes to show you how little credibility that they have when, and by the way, Brent Bozell and Dan Schneider at the Media Research Center that put that study out there, they do incredible work. Just think about it. And I followed that because I love some of the work that they do. 92% of the coverage against Donald Trump was negative, with all the good things that he's done. Like you said,
I know.
11 pages of accomplishments, but not to the mainstream media. By the way, 97% of the coverage on Elon Musk was negative.
100% against Hegseth.
100% against our friend Pete Hegseth. And by the way, recruitment for our military is through the roof.
Dude, but the funny part is, that's the funny thing is, how do you not say that that's a positive? Like, somehow they can turn the biggest win it's like Jim McLaughlin won the lottery. Now he's going to squander.
Now he's going to have to pay a lot of taxes.
Right. They can turn the best thing into the most negative thing. Jim, I want to ask you one other thing, though. We spend all of this time the media does, talking about Donald Trump's poll numbers up and down. But here's the thing that they don't want to tell you. The Democrats are in a world of hurt. They have no leader. They have no policies. How bad is it right now for the Democratic Party?
Well, just look at the last couple days. Who is the media trying to elevate again? They're trying to elevate Kamala Harris, and they're trying to, elevate Tampon Tim Walz.
He's a code talker. Did you know that? He's a code talker.
He knows how to get men to vote for white men. I'm sorry, they always got to play the race card. He knows how to get white men. Let me tell you something. Most normal, especially Midwestern white men, the last person they want to hear from is Tim Walz.
Right.
And it just goes to, and look, the big problem that the Democrats have, Sean, is they have a policy and a performance problem. Policy and performance. Everything they do turns to what, as President Trump says. You can't point to Gavin Newsom. He's doing a great job out in California, right? Horrible job.
Right.
You look at J.B. Pritzker, a Kathy Hochul in New York, just comes out. The vast majority of Democrats don't want to reelect her in recent polling in New York. And then you go to the only thing worse than their governors are their crazy Marxist socialist mayors. And I'm telling you, I'm going to, this is a little bit off track, but this guy, Mamandi in New York City, who's an admitted, terrorist sympathizer and basically a Marxist, I think he's going to give Andrew Cuomo a run for his money, because it's the radical left that is controlling these Democratic primaries across the country. And that's literally, it goes back to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is fighting all this stuff. He's trying to turn all this stuff back. And you know what I loved? The first quarter of the crime statistics in New York City, they went down for the first time significantly. You know when? Since Donald Trump was president. And now all the left wingers, all the Democrats in New York are trying to take credit for it. Why did it happen? He literally is getting the criminal illegal immigrants off the streets, even in a place like New York City where they're not really helping them that much. Talk about effectiveness. That's effectiveness.
Jim McLaughlin, always love our conversations. Thank you for sharing these insights with us, and look forward to having you back soon.
Thank you, Sean, and the pleasure's all mine.
All right, brother. See you soon. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Please go to SeanSpicer.com to sign up for my free newsletter. A new edition drops today, every Monday and Friday. I appreciate you spending your week with us. As I said, a ton of great guests coming this week. Trish Regan with us tomorrow. Have a great night. We'll see you back here. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.